So thank you. Welcome, Michelle Kidd.
My name is Michelle Kidd, and I lost my son Nathaniel on December 7, 2019, at the age of 19 to suicide. I started a Facebook page called Nate's Story 4 months after his death as a way to deal with the grief of losing him. That page eventually evolved into what is now the nonprofit Nate's Story, where we aim to break the stigma surrounding grief, trauma, and mental health issues through support, guidance, education, and perseverance. We provide information about different forms of mental health treatment and options. We hold a festival every year in April called the Head to Cleats Festival, where we promote physical and mental health. The Gloucester City School District and the Quinton School District both have a Nate's Story Club that is student-led. It aims to increase mental health awareness within the school. We have provided confidence workshops for young girls, fund wellness weeks for local school districts, and provide scholarships and offer financial assistance for families obtaining mental health services. Nate's Story has become the way I deal with my own grief of losing my son, share my son's story with everyone I can, and help assure no family ever deals with the loss as we have. I'd like to share something I wrote about the day I found out I lost my son to suicide. On December 9, 2019, I walked into the conference room of the local police department. It had been 2 days of searching for my son Nathaniel. I was called in around 2:30 p.m. after spending the entire day scouring nearby neighborhoods. On Facebook, people began sharing possible sightings on the missing persons post I had made 24 hours prior. Earlier that day, I actually came here to the Camden prosecutor's office pleading for them to help because I felt like my local police department wasn't doing enough. I was in fact mistaken. I slowly walked into the conference room and I noticed the tears in the police officer's eyes, who was sitting across the large conference table. The words began to spill out slowly as they pierced me deep in my soul. Nathaniel is no longer with us. Those words, I knew they were real. I felt them deep in my gut, but how was I expected to accept that? My oldest son was gone. I slumped down in the chair in shock. Emotion ran throughout my body, and I just cried. Tears poured out of my eyes and slowly rolled down my cheeks, and his dad sobbed. I sucked in air and looked across the table at the police officer through my blurry eyes and asked, "How do you know?" It wasn't enough to hear the words, "Nathaniel's no longer with us." I needed him to explain, and he did. His car was located at the foot of the Ben Franklin Bridge. Detectives spent some time reviewing footage from the bridge surveillance until they saw him. They saw him wearing the black and white sweatshirt that was described to us, he explained, as he was fighting tears himself. I bought him that sweatshirt months earlier. We had gone to the mall together after an earlier appointment. I had bought him sneakers too that day. The sweatshirt was made of a really soft material, and I had told him he looked like a panda bear in it. The police officer continued. They saw the sweatpants and Bears wool hat that you described as well. He had been wearing that Chicago Bears hat nonstop for weeks, and those sweatpants had a tear and stains on them. I wanted so badly to get my hands on them and throw them away. You can view the footage if you want to, he hesitated to tell me, but I had no interest in seeing it. The picture suddenly engraved in my mind was more than enough to haunt me for a lifetime. I never doubted it was him. My heart suddenly hurt for those police officers who had to go to the bridge security office and sit there viewing hours of footage until they finally saw him. The police report said, surveillance video showed a male entering the walkway of the bridge, exact time 11:15 a.m. Two people walked past, Mal leaned on the railing, and there was a jogger. Right after the jogger passed, Mal climbed that railing and grasped the light post for approximately 9 seconds. Then the subject let go and leaped from the railing. Those officers watched this, a 19-year-old boy from their small town that one officer in the room coached. This has become an image they will forever be unable to unsee. His father began repeating through his wails, I told him to clean his room. The last thing I told him was to clean his room. I sat there sunken in my chair with my hands clasped together in my lap, suddenly recalling the last time I had seen him. 3 days prior, as he left my house, I hugged him and told him I loved him. He had come over for dinner. He sat at the table watching us all eat. He watched the banter between his brothers and their stepdad. He ate so slowly and continued observing, hardly interacting. I knew this because I sat and watched him. Anytime he was around me, I watched him because I had been so worried about him for so long. When he got up from the table after hardly eating his dinner, I felt it in my gut. Why was he acting so strangely? Why was he watching everyone so intently? He had hardly said a word. But when he put his dinner in the refrigerator and said, "I'll come over Sunday and finish it," my uneasy feeling was eased. He told me he was going to meet some friends and leaned in and gave me a hug. He held on tighter than usual. I felt it. And that feeling inside me returned. Why was he holding me so long? But I convinced myself at the time I was overreacting. I whispered in his ear as I always did when we hugged, "I love you," and I kissed the side of his neck. He responded, "I love you too," as he squeezed me one last time. That was the night before he ended his life. That thought filled my heart for just a moment as I sat slumped in a chair, tears trickling down my face, because then in an instant my thoughts quickly shifted to my other children. How do I tell them? What should I say? What are the right words to use in explaining suicide to your children? I needed help. I began to sit up and frantically search the room. I saw a door in the back of the room that I found myself suddenly waiting and expecting some type of social worker or professional to walk through and help me. I had such an overwhelming sense of protecting my other children, but I also harbored such immediate weight of guilt. I didn't want to do it wrong. This moment was everything. I didn't want to fail them. I felt as if I already had. I failed Nathaniel and all my kids. How does their child feel their only option is to take their life? How couldn't his own mother fix him, help him? That's a mother's job, right? Do you have someone to help me tell my kids? I asked. The police officers were startled by the question and fumbled a bit to answer. I can call Monsignor from church for you. I didn't know what to say. Suicide leaves such guilt. So many felt it, and they continue to feel it in association with Nathaniel's death. He wasn't quiet about his troubles, but he wasn't exactly open either. That same morning, before I knew I lost him, I was taking a shower and I had music playing on my phone in an attempt to distract my worry. I stood in the shower and prayed for a sign, something to shed some light on where he was. Creep by Radiohead came on. I sank to my knees in the shower that morning and sobbed, listening to the words, "I don't belong here." I felt it then, deep in my gut, but I forced myself to hold on to hope until I finally stepped into that conference room that afternoon and heard those words, "Nathaniel is no longer with us." My son felt different and was convinced that something was wrong with him. People just don't understand, is what he would say. But the truth is, so many individuals walk around every day carrying the weight of so much. They feel so alone in a world so overpopulated. They beg for someone to see them, notice, yet not a word is said. Sometimes their hurt runs so deep enough that they are convinced suicide is their only option. But this too is hurt. This is unlike anything imaginable, losing your child. I know others may experience worse situations or feel worse. This is why it is so important for every person in this world to know they play such an important part. Nathaniel's no longer with us. These words echo in my head, but I won't accept that he is gone. He is here now with a purpose, to be heard. He is here to guide those battling their own heads, and he will take you by the hand. Promise yourself and your loved ones another day. Keep talking and sharing your experiences with others, and don't keep it in anymore. Find comfort in knowing you are not the only one. The aftermath of suicide is nothing any parent, spouse, sibling, friend, or anybody ever wants or should experience. It's waking up thinking it was all a dream for a split second until you are suddenly washed over in sadness, gut punched and gasping for air, remembering this is your reality. It's being reminded by a smell, a thought, a song, an object, and tears suddenly running down your eyes. It's being unable to socialize because you can't bring yourself to be around other people and their children. It's sleepless nights of going through all the what ifs, overanalyzing every move you made, and constant feeling of regret. It's fear of losing someone else you love in the same way. It's leaving the conference room on the phone with your child's therapist, begging her for the right words to tell your children their brother is dead. It's never finding him and never having closure. It's fighting and longing to be enraged or wanting to put blame on others. It's fear of being left alone, but feeling like all you want is to be by yourself. It's counting the days without them and the dates on the calendar suddenly becoming such a huge reminder of the loss you suffered. It's literally forcing yourself every single day to get out of bed, forcing yourself to allow happiness despite wanting to never smile again. It's reliving every moment, holding on to memories, and feeling sadness for the future moments lost. It's looking at your other children and praying they'll forever remember him, but be okay without him. It's experiencing life without him and praying you have the strength to keep going. It's taking the worst experience of your life, picking up the pieces of the aftermath of suicide, and the moment you heard the words, "Nathaniel is no longer with us," and doing everything in your power to make sure that those words are furthest from the truth. It's taking this horrible situation and making sure the world knows my son and his story being the reason others keep going, keep talking, and most importantly, go on living another day. Thank you.